Hello, welcome to Daily News from Marja'iyat TV. Grand Ayatollah Shirazi walks barefooted on the morning of Ashura 2022. Coinciding with Muharram 10th, the Grand Shia jurist Ayatollah Shirazi, along with a group of scholars, clerics and seminarians, walked barefooted to sympathize with the tragedies of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, on the day of Ashura. It is worth noting that this ritual is conducted by the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi every year. House of Grand Ayatollah Shirazi hosts commemorations of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. The House of the Grand Shia jurist Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi continues to host the commemorations of the Master of Martyrs, Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, in the holy city of Qom in Iran. These commemorations were attended by various groups of Shia believers and lovers of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, as well as religious scholars and activists at the presence of the Grand Jurist. The lecturers at these events address the outstanding uprising of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, and the participants recite eulogies in honor of His Holiness. It is worth noting that the House of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi will continue to host these commemorations for 13 consecutive days, both in the mornings and afternoons and in the two languages of Persian and Arabic. House of Grand Ayatollah Shirazi hosts annual gathering of Husseini mourners in Holy Qom, Iran. On Monday, August 8, 2022, coinciding with the day of Ashura in Muharram 10th, the House of His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Shirazi hosted the annual gathering of the Husseini mourners in the holy city of Qom, Iran. This large gathering was attended by cultural, religious, and social figures who listened to a speech by His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Shirazi. Statements by the Grand Jurist were streamed live on social media web pages of Marja'iyat TV. It is worth noting that this speech was also aired on Marja'iyat TV and other Shia TV networks with a short delay. The speech by the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi was in Farsi, and it was simultaneously translated into English and Arabic. Nonviolence Incorporation warns of escalation of Serbia-Kosovo tensions. Nonviolence Incorporation Free Muslim Association published a statement warning of the escalation of tensions in Serbia and Kosovo. Here come some parts of this statement. Nonviolence Incorporation warns of another human catastrophe like the one in the 90s and called on governments and nations in the two republics of Serbia and Kosovo to curb the current crisis. This Human Rights Foundation has been monitoring the tense situation between the borders of the two countries for a long time and is very worried about the escalation of conflicts because there is a fear that these conflicts will turn into military operations and result in catastrophic losses. Therefore, it is necessary for all parties in this situation to use the language of discourse, understanding, and logic to find and create acceptable solutions. Therefore, Nonviolence Incorporation requests the leaders and statesmen of the two countries to keep their nations away from the complications of proxy wars and not use them as a fuel for the fire of war to secure the interests of the great powers. Nonviolence Incorporation calls on Egyptian rulers to be compassionate to their nation. Nonviolence Incorporation published a statement calling on the Egyptian government to be more considerate of their nation. Nonviolence Incorporation Free Muslim Association calls on the Egyptian government to behave with kindness in interacting with their citizens, especially the poor and the destitute, and pay attention to their legitimate demands and avoid using violence and show of force against them. According to some information received by this organization, the security forces of the Aswan province of Egypt have arrested dozens of workers who demanded settlement and payment of their salaries for gathering and calling for demonstrations. In this sense, it is worthy and appropriate that the government listens to their words and takes suitable ways to satisfy their demands. Nonviolence Incorporation Free Muslim Association calls on the Egyptian government to release the detainees of the Aswan province and others who have been detained for expressing opinions and criticism. Rasul Adham Husayniya holds Husseini memorials in Switzerland. Rasul Adham Husayniya, affiliated with the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in Switzerland, hosted Husseini memorials to mourn the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. These memorials are attended by members of the Al-Zahra Husayniya in this country. Rasul Adham Husayniya commemorates martyrdom of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, in London, the UK. Rasul Adham Center, affiliated with the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in London, the UK, held ceremonies to mourn the anniversary of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, during the first 10 days of Muharram. Large numbers of Shia believers and lovers of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, participated in these ceremonies. Office of Grand Ayatollah Shirazi holds Husseini memorials in Damascus, Syria. The Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in Damascus, Syria hosted Husseini memorials to mourn the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. These memorials are attended by groups of Shia believers, religious activists, and the public. Sheikh Majid al-Fatlawi and Sheikh Muhammad al-Imami delivered speeches at these ceremonies. PR manager of Grand Ayatollah Shirazi visits Husseini Mawakib in Holy Najaf, Iraq. Sayyid Haidar al-Hajjar, the director of the Public Relations Department of the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in Holy Najaf, visited several Husseini Mawakib in this city. In these visits, the Grand Jurist representative was informed of the activities of these Mawakib and relayed the prayers and instructions of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi to them. Sayyid Ahmed Shirazi continues to visit Husseini memorials in Kuwait. Sayyid Ahmed Shirazi, son of His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Shirazi, continues to visit the Husseini memorials held by the Shia believers in Kuwait during the first 10 days of Muharram. The meeting house of the Haji Ibrahim al-Bihbahani and the Mawakib of Razi were among these centers that hosted the Grand Jurist's son. Representative of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi delivers a speech at Imam Hussein Husayniya in Beirut, Lebanon. Sheikh Jalal Maash, one of the representatives of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi, took part in the Husseini memorials at the Husayniya of Imam Hussein bin Ali in Beirut, Lebanese capital. In his remarks, Sheikh Maash elaborated on the Husseini rituals and the education of the Ahlul Bayt culture. Matam al-Sakin Husayniya organized a symbolic funeral of Hazrat Qasim, peace be upon him, in Bahrain. The Husayniya of Matam al-Sakin, affiliated with the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in Bahrain, organized the symbolic funeral of Hazrat Qasim, peace be upon him, in this country. The Husayniya of Matam al-Sakin is affiliated with the Office of Sheikh Abdul Shahid al-Satrawi, one of the representatives of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi. Shia believers hold Husseini memorials in Madagascar. The Shia believers in Mahajanga city of Madagascar hold Husseini memorials during the first 10 days of Muharram. These ceremonies are hosted at the Ahlul Bayt Center. Taziyah shows are also part of these ceremonies. Activities by Shia Societies Association during Muharram memorials in Iraq. Shia Societies Association, affiliated with the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in Holy Kabbalah, continues its activities during the first 10 days of Muharram 2022. Some delegations from this association visited the Ali Mustafa Husayniya in Hashemiya city and met with the believers in different parts of Iraq. Imam Shirazi Center honors Tasu'a Day in Montreal, Canada. Imam Shirazi World Center in Montreal, Canada held Husseini memorials on the 9th day of Muharram, Tasu'a Day. Dozens of Shia believers and lovers of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, participate in these memorials and listen to speeches by Sheikh Saleh Sibvey and Sayyid Muhammad al-Ajdad. Islamic Center in Athens holds Muharram memorials in Greece. Afghan Shia believers living in Athens, Greece, gathered at the Islamic Center, affiliated with the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in this city, to hold the Husseini memorials in the first 10 days of Muharram 2022. The Shia believers and the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, honored the tragedy of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him. Managers of Ahlul Bayt Institute visit Husseini Mawakib in Basra, Iraq. In compliance to the directives of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi, Ahlul Bayt Cultural and Charitable Institute, affiliated with the Office of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi in Basra, visited several Husseini Mawakib in this city. In these visits, the prayers and instructions of the Grand Ayatollah Shirazi were relayed to these activists.